welcome to Previously on X-Men, the podcast that looks at X-Men comics, movies, shows, characters, and more. I'm Hillary, and today I've got with me...
It's Nick. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm ready. I'm ready to dive in. This is a weird one.
It's always a different experience having you on the podcast and having Eric on the podcast.
Why is that?
Because... no, listen, it's probably just the introductions. It's mainly the introductions.
Okay.
Because I'm like, I'm Hillary, and you're like, hey, I'm here, hi!
Sorry, I'm jazzed. I'm ready.
And every time Eric is on the podcast, I'm like, I'm Hillary. And then there's silence.
Okay.
And Eric's like, oh, hi, yeah, I'm here too.
Oh, okay.
So it's different, is all I'm saying.
Eric is currently deep into a rediscovery of Grant Morrison's X-Men, which is like his go-to. He has all the single issues, and now he's wanting to go through and like read it omnibus style.
The only thing that I ever think when you say the name Grant Morrison, and this is stupid, I shouldn't.
Okay.
But I only ever think he writes weird stuff. That's like the only...
Listen,
like I have to have read Grant Morrison, but like I don't pay as much attention as you and Eric to like who's writing what and all that kind of stuff. So I'm sure I've read it. But all I think of is you guys talking about him being weird.
Yeah, well, that's true. And honestly, I don't even think Grant Morrison would take issue with that. He'd be like, yeah, correct. You're right.
Yeah.
So yeah, Eric is rediscovering that whole journey right now. I'll tell you what I rediscovered thanks to the podcast Previously on X-Men, the Dark Phoenix saga. Which
we got a deep dive.
The last time I was here, you remember that X-Men Misfits? Remember what a good time you had with that?
Such a good time,
X-Men
Misfits?
Misfits?
I liked that. It was fun.
I was saying how the Dark Phoenix saga was pure nonsense to me as a child, but watching it again along with you guys and listening to the podcast, it actually did make sense to me now.
That's what my experience was too. And I think I said something about it in the podcast that like it was constantly playing because they were so proud of it.
Yeah.
But with that, like being played out of order because they were doing all the weird out of order nonsense with how they aired it, and then airing it as a rerun in no particular order.
Right.
And it just felt completely isolated and nonsensical to me.
Yeah.
And it's also very detailed. Like on the rewatch, it's like there's a lot going on.
There's so much going on.
And maybe as a kid, I was just sort of like, pretty bird.
Well, Eric,
I wasn't that young.
Eric made a point too in the episode that like after this, Jean's appearances get really sporadic, and I remember feeling that too. Like I'm watching an episode and be like, "Oh, Jean's here." So then like having Jean be gone and then popping into Dark Phoenix, where like not only is she back, but she's like the centerpiece, and there's all these other weird things going on, which is very confusing to me as a child.
Yeah.
So
the rewatch is really helping. I mean, like with Jean and with her relationship with Scott and all of that, watching things in order has an impact.
Who would have thought?
Yeah.
Who would have thought?
So anyway, we're not talking about the Dark Phoenix today.
All right.
I thought we would talk about Nature Girl.
Nature Girl, okay.
Nature Girl, who, from my perspective, and sort of seems like maybe just in general, just sort of kind of emerged, just was like there all of a sudden. When they started having more stable school environments after a while with the X-Men, because like we've gone through phases where it's like, it's a school, it's like two mutants on a journey.
Right.
It's, like we've gone through phases like that.
Yeah.
And it seems like in the most recent iterations of... okay, we have a school, we have a civilization of mutants, whatever. Lots of new young mutants have popped up. Mm-hmm. Nature Girl seems to be one of these. Her and like Eye-Boy.
Yeah.
The guy who like speaks to Krakoa, whatever his name is.
Oh, right. Cypher?
Cypher.
The Cypher? Yeah.
And those people just sort of like were like, oh yeah, here, these guys are here too.
Yeah. Well, I think back in the first set of issues of Wolverine and the X-Men, like there was a more recent series, but the older series introduced a whole new crop of people, and that was... They were all also sort of weird, It was kind of like
it's like stretching the boundaries of like mutantness, because it was like in the early days, it felt a lot like there were like for a long time in the X-Men lore. There's like mutants, and then there's like 3 or 4 physically visible mutations, and that's like a big deal for those individuals.
Yeah.
And more recently, it seems like they're exploring a lot of that being a lot more common.
Yeah.
In mutantdom.
Well, it's interesting because if you look back in the 60s and stuff, like you would think something like X-Men would be the place where you were exploring that, but it was really more a Fantastic Four thing, like Ben Grimm dealing with him being the only one who has like this physical where he can't fit into regular society. I think that was explored way more in Fantastic Four than X-Men, and of course that's changed over time. But it's interesting to see both versions of Wolverine and the X-Men did kind of prioritize some of these more unusual mutations, which, there's a lot to do with that.
There's a lot to do with that, and it's also sort of a nice little kind of metaphor, because they're all young, they're going to school, and it's like how do you
puberty.
fit in? Yeah, I mean, sort of, yeah. Like it just sort of goes into that realm.
Yep.
But anyway, so I've picked Nature Girl because she's always been interesting to me in her weird in the backgroundness, and like she's sort of mysterious. Like they don't go into her very much, and also everyone around her is sort of like what's your deal, lady?
Yeah.
But
I don't think she talks at all in Wolverine and the X-Men.
They think she's mute for a long time, and then she's sort of like talking to herself at one point in a park or something. And iBoy is like, "Hey,
wait a minute."
speaking.
I think it was Iceman, actually. Weirdly enough, it was when we did the Iceman spotlight forever ago, and I was reading through his solo series. There's like the Wolverine's X-Men team shows up in the end of that, and that was the first time like I saw Nature Girl, like with the antlers and everything, and I was like, "Who's this lady?"
Yeah,
and I've read more since then. But
when it comes to X-Men, and this comes up a lot when I'm talking to Eric about it, because Eric knows all of the things.
He knows weird.
He knows every step of every character.
Yeah.
He's the kind of guy who, like, if he doesn't read about it, he goes and researches it, and he will know. He will find out all of the things. I am not this person. Like, I just come across things, and I'm like, interesting. And so Nature Girl, I always find kind of vindicating, because when I first started seeing her pop up in things, I was like, she must be from something that I don't know about, and I'm just going to accept. But no. I'm pretty sure that that's just how she appeared, that she was just like, hello, I'm here, and nobody really talks to me for a while, but then I'm going to have a major arc coming up.
It's not really until the Infinity Comics where she's a marquee character even. So
so the reason I picked her was in the most recent Infinity comic, the X-Men Infinity comic. Yeah. She's got a really big role. Okay. Yep. Kind of like coming back and forth.
I've read those now.
Now we know.
Yes.
So there were two Infinity comics dealing with the X-Men. There's a Wolverine one. Yeah. And then this one that's X-Men. Was it Legacy?
X-Men Unlimited Infinity.
Unlimited.
X-Men Unlimited, yeah.
Okay.
And there was an older X-Men Unlimited, and this is not connected to that, but yeah, X-Men Unlimited, the Infinity comic.
Yeah. So you read Infinity Comics a lot earlier than I ever did. I was reading just like the traditional comics on the app. The original Infinity Comics, I believe, the concept was a lot more like standalone and not really like getting into stuff too much.
Yeah. Well, I think the X-Men one is the longest running because it's up to like 75 issues or something like that. It's really up there. But early on, they were more like these quick bite things. Like when we did Deadpool Invisible Touch, that's kind of like its own thing. And the ones that I really gravitated towards were like Spider-Bot was my favorite. I love Spider-Bot.
Everybody likes, who's the shark guy?
Oh, that's Eric's favorite. It's Jeff. Yeah.
It's Jeff.
Yeah. Jeff is really popular. But yeah, I read all of it. I read Captain America and Fantastic Four, and I read the Ms. Marvel. And I like when they go back and they repurpose existing, like they did Charles Schultz She-Hulk, they put in Infinity Comic format. They put...
No, hang on. When you say Charles Schultz...
Soul.
Okay. I thought you said Charles Schultz, and I was like...
Who created the Peanuts? No.
So like Charlie Brown?
No, not Charlie Brown. Okay. But they've also been going back and they took like Ms. Marvel's introduction and put that in the Infinity Comic, that infinite scroll, cell phone friendly, like webtoon style. But yeah, I think to your point, I think originally they were a little bit more isolated, like you could read them alone. I don't know, like there was things that I was just like, okay, I don't know what's happening in the grand scheme of things X-Men wise, but I get it, I can roll with it. They're on Krakoa,
Yeah, so this stuff with Nature Girl in the Infinity comic is taking place at a time in the X-Men history that I have not cracked into before this. Okay. So this has actually been a really interesting window into that. I'm starting to understand what's going on with all of that. Because all of this stuff, I keep seeing images of Xavier in the like X helmet thing with like the full body black cat suit situation and stuff. And I didn't know that was Xavier. And I didn't know
at first,
I did not know what was going on. So now I've read through all of these Nature Girl things and I'm like, oh, right, Krakoa and Resurrection.
Yeah.
and all of that crazy stuff that's happening now that I just haven't tapped into.
Okay. No, same. I'm not that far either. But I will say, I feel like the Infinity Comics, the X-Men Infinity Comics in particular, are written in a way where it's okay to sort of be like, okay, I don't fully get all the details of what's happening here, but it doesn't really impact the story that they're focusing on.
Yeah.
Like, the greater context is helpful, but you can read these without being fully caught up in all things X-Men.
I have demonstrated that
yes,
that is true.
You've made that,
because I do not know.
You've made that very clear.
I don't know the background, but I am capable of reading it. The interesting thing about this particular, the X-Men one, is that it's not really a standalone. Like, it does, I think it impacts and is impacted by the broader context a lot more
like
than
the OG,
than
like
previous
Prince,
Infinity Comics.
Seems to be the case, yes. I agree. I've compiled a little bit of background on Nature Girl here. Would you like me to hit you with some facts?
I would love some facts.
Some factoids.
Give me some facts.
Some fun facts. Okay. Nature Girl, a.k.a. Lin Lee, was created by Jason Latour and Mahmoud Asrar. Her powers include communication with and control of nature. Lots of things going on. And she gets progressively more, like, powerful as the Infinity Comics go along. Yeah,
initially when you see her, it's like everyone's having a conversation over here and she's just like talking to a bird in the background.
Pretty much. So she first appeared in Wolverine and the X-Men. That's volume 2 of that title. Like, there was the original one, and this is a more recent one. This one is the one that leads into Death of Wolverine, which is kind of a bad story. But anyway, first appeared in Wolverine and the X-Men, Volume 2, Number 1 in 2014. She's introduced as a student at the Jean Grey School for Higher Learning, as we said. She bonds with Eye-Boy, who's Trevor Hawkins, really early. She bonds with the little Bamf creatures, although there's kind of a turn with those guys. Everybody thinks she's mute. And then the culmination of her in Wolverine and the X-Men is she helps defend the school from Faithful John's attack when she calls this, like, Legion of Birds. So that's like the Wolverine and the X-Men era. Then there's Generation X, which I think you have read these Generation X. I think you've talked about this before.
That's when Jubilee's like a vampire?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, that was that was one of those highlight, you don't know the whole mythology kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because I just started reading it and I was like, is she a vampire?
Yeah.
Is Jubilee a vampire now?
Yeah. Yeah. Although Generation X kind of resolves that story as well. But anyway,
and she has a son.
She has a
son.
All
things that I didn't know about Jubilee.
She has a son, I know. And in Generation X, there's a big storyline of Nature Girl and Eye-Boy sort of taking the boy, Shogu is his name, to the zoo. And Nature Girl's like letting him play with bears and stuff because she can control them. So whole big thing there.
She doesn't control them, Nick.
Right.
She communes
She connects with them, yes. Yes. I think she could probably convince them to do whatever she wants.
I mean, yes, eventually, yes.
Also, her and Eye-Boy decide to just be friends.
They're just going to be friends.
So if you were rooting for that romance, it doesn't happen.
The thing with Eye-Boy, too.
Okay.
Comics are so funny with this kind of thing, with, like, depending on who's drawing it and all this stuff, things can really drastically change. Eye-Boy, the amount of eyes that he has on his body changes drastically.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes he's just like just
all eyes.
Yeah. Just eyes
like a
everywhere.
Biblical angel.
Sometimes he's just like a surfer dude with a few extra eyes, like on his cheeks,
a couple extras tossed in. How do you feel about this Generation X run overall?
I liked it. Yeah, this kind of got me more interested in newer X-Men stuff than I had been.
Yeah.
Because I pretty solidly in like the classic X-Men vibe.
Yeah.
And it's hard to get me into more teenage guys. You know what I mean? Because they start young, way back.
Yeah.
But then they grew up.
Yeah.
Like the X-Men are adults now, and I can identify with them because I too am an adult. And so, like, when they remine the, like, school stuff, it's been harder for me to get into that. But the Gen X run kind of got me back in there.
Sometimes, it's like diminishing returns sometimes. It's like, oh, it's another new class. And, like, sometimes it works and sometimes it feels a little bit like Saved by the Bell, the new class. That's a dated reference, everyone. But when they replace the originals with a worse team, is kind of what happens. But anyway, Generation X. The next is Age of X-Men Next Gen. So this is that whole situation where Nate Gray creates this, like, whatever, pocket universe and Nature Girl gets pulled into there. I haven't read this. Have you?
Yeah, I read it.
Is it interesting? Is it?
It is interesting. I mean, I'm always less interested than maybe actually you in pocket universe things.
I like that stuff.
They just feel a little less
relevant. Like they matter.
But I mean, like, at least with the Nate Gray, with the Next Gen stuff, it does connect to the like regular universe, because like it's bringing in people from the regular universe, sending them back, so it has impact on characters that will keep going in the main universe. So
now I read that in this version Nature Girl is like core X-Men, where she's fringe and everything else, but in this universe she's like one of the top tier X-Men.
Yes, but that actually sort of ends up meaning that you don't really see much of her, because what the story shows is Nate Gray has created this world and everybody has all these different roles. But what we focus on is this small group of like underling people who aren't main X-Men. It's like more student kind of thing.
I see.
And them being like, what the H is happening?
She can't catch a break.
None of these things are making any sense. So yeah, she's there. She's like X-Men, but she's still kind of in the background because the X-Men themselves are in the background of the story.
But she ends up wanting to stay. Like she begs Nate Gray to stay in the world because like it's better for her.
Yeah, and I couldn't tell if like the world is going to go on, because it's not really a real universe.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like this weird thing that Nate Gray.
So she just wants to stay in the Matrix. She just wants to stay,
I guess,
stay plugged in. Okay. Well, then that pretty much brings us up to the Krakoa era, where she and the others like settle on Krakoa, and she's sort of under the guidance of the New Mutants and everything, and that sort of rolls into X-Men Green, which is like the umbrella title for all of these Nature Girl arcs.
Yeah. Yeah. So with the Infinity Comics, it has a whole bunch of arcs, including the Deadpool Juggernaut one.
Why?
That almost made me stop reading it entirely.
I think that is where I stopped reading it.
So stupid. But then I kept going, and then there was this X-Men Green stuff, which was really cool. But yeah, it takes place in the timeline, or, you know, the place in time when mutants have their own continent on Krakoa, and there's all kinds of things like they're like a race of people. They're like a whole country.
Yeah.
And there's like international politics and all kinds of things like that happening.
Sounds kind of cool.
Yeah, it's interesting. But in the Infinity comic, we end up focusing a lot on Nature Girl.
Right.
Starting to get a little more active in response to like
environmental
damage to the planet.
Yes. So the concept of X-Men Green was created by Gary Dugan and Emilio Laszlo for the X-Men Infinity title. The team first appeared in issue number 7, October 2021. And over the course of the run, at least as far as we've gotten to so far, Nature Girl is the center for all of the things branded X-Men Green.
So when they first appear, it's not really, they're not a team.
No.
They're just like people hanging out. And Nature Girl is starting to have this like issue, and she starts talking with Curse, and they decide that they're going to go out into the wide world and solve some problem. I think the first thing that they do is like there's like an oil mine or something.
No, the first thing is the dead turtle. They find like a sea tortoise washed up on the beach with like plastic.
Oh, is that the trigger?
Yes, that is the trigger. Wow. And Nature Girl is like, you know what? Enough of this! And takes one of the portals and goes to the place where the plastic is and ends up just like killing people.
Yeah, so this is a huge turn. This is a huge turn for Nature Girl.
Yeah.
She goes from talking to birds and being like Cinderella.
Yeah, hardly saying a word.
Yeah, she goes and she murders a bunch of people because they make plastic bags.
Yes.
And Curse is just sort of along for the ride.
Yeah.
This is my first interaction with Curse. I had never seen her before.
And these powers took me a little while, Curse's powers, took me a little while to get a handle on, because they're Jinx powers, but it's like she has to act on what she feels. And so it's either she puts out there a jinx, a curse on somebody else, and then she's okay, or she doesn't, or she does something positive, but the negative falls back on her.
Yes.
So it's like, in order for her to go on, she has to do bad things.
Yes. Which is an interesting little tightrope thing, because it takes you a while to sort of figure out whether or not she actually wants bad things to happen.
Right.
And it sort of seems like, in the end, no, not really.
Yeah.
But she just can't not curse people.
Right.
Because if she does, if she like stops herself, it hurts her.
Right.
And I don't know if it's like it turns the curse around on her, or if it just causes pain or damage or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, we'll see.
I mean, she pretty much, all she can do is try to aim it. You know what I mean? Like, it's gonna happen, so, like, let's have it happen to villains rather than, like, friends, you know?
She's a useful character to have at this moment for Nature Girl.
Yeah.
Because it's a very, like, crystallized version, sort of what's happening.
Yeah.
Because we're going from Krakoa, which is, like, this weirdly idyllic space.
Right.
And, like, nobody dies, because if you die, you can just be resurrected by whatever. And, like, all of these things. And it's just sort of this perfect world.
Yeah.
And so then you kind of zoom in on Nature Girl, who you sort of thought was one of these idyllic type. I mean, it's very, like, green, happy, whatever. And then Curse, who's, like, only darkness.
Right.
But a child, like a cute little child.
Yeah. And Nature Girl's thing is that, like, she feels the pain of the earth no matter where she is or what she's doing. So even when she's, like, on Krakoa in this idyllic place, like, the anguish of, like, the planet still is affecting her. And so she can't really shut that off. I do love that they get a dog. That's,
is that in the first?
Oh, it's the very beginning.
Yeah, they get Saoirse, she's like a...
She's a police dog. The police send the dogs in to, like, sniff out Nature Girl and see what's going on, and she is like, "Hey, buddy," and then they're just like pals, and so it's like the 3 X-Men Green in the beginning is Nature Girl, Curse, and Saoirse the dog.
Saoirse the dog.
Yeah.
So cute. So they do this. They murder a bunch of people.
Yeah.
And I don't know if everybody else really knows yet that this kind of thing is happening.
Yeah.
Because they keep escalating.
Yeah.
Over time.
It's pretty quick that Xavier is onto it because he sends Wolverine to go after her. Oh, I forgot about that. Which, like, as you remember, Wolverine was, like, her teacher because she was a student at the Jean Grey School when he was, like, the lead. So, like, they have a relationship, and he's like, "Hey, I don't want to, I don't want to fight. I don't want to hurt you, but, like, you can't kill people who make plastic bags and things like that. So let's go." And so some interesting use of her powers with Wolverine, fighting Wolverine and not causing too much. And Curse, is jinxing him, so he ends up, like, stabbing himself and things like that. That's a whole thing. Yeah. It's a whole thing. But it's interesting.
But he hunts her for a while.
He does. The first arc, which is, like, I don't know, the 5 issues or so, Wolverine is, like, on the hunt.
I forgot about that. I liked that part.
I liked it,
just
too,
having
because...
him kind of, like, going after them.
Yeah.
It was very...
Because the X-Men are kind of the antagonists of this.
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah, at the very beginning, their X-Men Green team is a lot more sympathetic.
Yes, but it starts with violence.
No, it does. I mean, it does.
It's not ambiguous.
But, like, they're killing people. It's a problem.
Yes, it is.
But it starts with presenting them as more sympathetic characters.
Yeah.
Like, they're doing this, but they're innocent in their feelings about it. Like, they're like, I need to... This just has to be done, and people aren't doing it, and I'm just going to take care of it. It gets increasingly antagonistic and just, like, bad over time. But initially, it's like you sort of want Wolverine to, like, get them and be like, okay,
all right, let's work this out. Yeah.
Let's chill out. But then eventually what happens is that they go too far.
Yeah. When they get pulled back to Krakoa, they're essentially, like, exiled. They're put into the pit.
They're put into the pit.
The pit of exile.
I did not know what the pit was.
Yeah.
People who are reading the current run probably know what the pit is. Yeah. But yeah, there's like a council on Krakoa.
Yeah.
And they're like fighting about, they have to, like, vote, but it's not unanimous, but they have to vote, and whoever, they vote. They do what you do when you vote. Yeah. And some people, like Kitty, is like, these are kids. We cannot throw them in a pit,
right,
Yeah. And then, but the people eventually are like, they're too dangerous and blah. They throw them in a pit.
Yeah.
However, is it Cypher?
Well, it is Cypher, but Krakoa is not down with this.
That's
like,
right.
Krakoa as its sentience.
Cypher is telling people what Krakoa is saying.
Yes.
He's like, listen,
you
can do what you want, but Krakoa is not cool with this.
Not down with it.
Yeah. So they throw him in the pit, but Krakoa and Cypher, I think Cypher comes into the pit and is like, so here's a thing, you can get out of here.
That's right.
And so he helps them escape from the pit.
With Pyro. Pyro helps as well. He gets them. Pyro gets them off Krakoa. He's in the very beginning when they're all hanging out at the beach, and then he comes back to help them escape. Mm-hmm. And it's at this point that Cypher gives her this, I don't remember what it's called. It's the cudgel. It's like the Krakoan
it's like a piece of
cudgel.
Of Krakoan
and
plant thing.
As far as, like, I've read up to, at our time of recording, I think it's issue 72. And the true power of the cudgel is not really known yet.
I think so.
I don't know if that's coming or if it's... Because there's a whole, like, she loses the cudgel, then she gets it back, and so it seems like it's something.
No, you know what it is? Is that's how she makes portals.
Oh, okay.
That's how she makes the portals.
Gotcha.
Because Krakoa can make these portals kind of anywhere on the planet, I guess. Right. So you can just walk from Krakoa to wherever.
Yeah.
So that's what it is.
Okay.
He gives her the cudgel so that she can make portals, and that's how she and Curse then start, and Saoirse, then start traveling places and murdering people.
Right. And then they team up with Sauron.
Yeah, how does Sauron get in
I think it's the oil stuff.
Is
I
it
think
the
oil stuff, Sauron is there, and then for a while it's kind of like the three of them.
Yeah.
And then using the portals, they end up in Wakanda, and they have a whole thing with Black Panther. They have a whole thing with Namor, and that's where Saoirse gets left, like the portals are coming and she can't get to Saoirse, so Saoirse ends up staying on Wakanda with Black Panther, which is
probably
sad.
Best for Saoirse.
It probably is. Well, I honestly thought she was going to die. I thought they were going to kill the dog. So the fact that she just gets to live in Wakanda is a pretty sweet deal. But this is where she loses the cudgel.
In Wakanda.
In this point, yeah. She loses it there. And she doesn't get it back again until they meet horticulture, which is a whole
Horticulture?
Thing.
Was completely new to me.
Yeah, I hadn't read Horticulture before.
So they're humans? Are they humans?
They're like an eco-terrorist group. Yeah, I really don't know much about them.
They seem to be a group of elderly women who are not mutants.
I don't think they're mutants.
I think they're just humans, and they do science and like make devices and things.
But are for sure terrorists.
They're terrorists. They're like bad guys.
Yeah.
But like for the Earth. And so, Nature Girl kind of gets in with them. And for a second, when they first arrive with the horticulture, and I don't know if they like just trip into it or if they've heard of these people. I can't remember.
Yeah, I can't remember quite how it ends up.
But they end up with the horticulture people, and it feels kind of like a sanctuary moment.
Right, it does.
Because they're still like Nature Girl and Curse at this point have come to like, we are a team.
Yes.
We are on this mission.
Yeah.
We're not doing the X-Men thing anymore at all. They're just cut off, but they're being pursued.
But they have still said they're the X-Men. Like the oil attack and everything, they're like, we are the X-Men. You know, and so that's another thing that the X-Men back on Krakoa are like, whoa.
The news is being like, the X-Men are murdering people. Because,
right. So it's not good.
But so the Krakoa people are sort of like hunting them.
Yeah.
And so they end up with the horticulture people. Horticulture.
With a D.
With a D because they're a horde.
Right. I get it.
It's a pun.
Yeah, it's fun.
And so it's sort of like the issue ends with them being like, okay, I guess we're here now and they're going to protect us.
Yes. Now keep in mind too that Nature Girl in the beginning of this is presented as she is in Generation X or Wolverine and the X-Men, where she's basically in a schoolgirl outfit but has big antlers.
But has antlers, yeah. She's very like standard girl.
But as this progresses, the antlers are getting bigger. She's getting a little bit more animalistic.
The thing that I like the most, the very first, I'm pretty sure the first like change in her physical appearance is that she still has the antlers, but she sort of loses the hair, and it's sort of like she's wearing a cap.
Yeah.
Like a dark,
like
thing with the antlers, and I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
Before she like continues down the line.
Yeah, there's a good moment in there. I'm not really thrilled with her look in the costume, but like the middle ground here is pretty good. But anyway, during the fight with Namor and then with Black Panther, she ends up losing the antlers, like they're cut off.
Oh yes, that's right.
And so when they end up with horticulture, and horticulture has recovered the Krakoan cudgel, they give it. It's a phrase I've never said before. They give it back to her. Not her antlers grow back, but bigger, and she also starts to get sort of like goat legs. I mean, she starts to kind of like...
She's getting some animal characteristics. Yeah. And it's a very classic literary thing. Like, as she is physically manifesting these, like, more and more intense appearance changes,
right,
she's also going deeper and deeper into what appears to be madness.
Yeah, it does, yeah.
And just getting really sucked into... this vendetta against anybody who has ever hurt her, anybody who has ever done anything to the earth.
Yeah.
And then it's the circle of who deserves her vengeance just keeps getting wider and wider and wider.
It's at this point where they connect with Armageddon Man, whose powers are to like basically draw in natural disaster like a magnet. Like that's his thing.
And like cause it?
Well, yeah. To sort of like work with what's happening and then like make it happen.
Channel it?
Yeah, channel it. Yeah, because it's just kind of like, let's take this all down.
Yeah, and like this is because the horticulture people, the horticulturalists,
sure,
want Armageddon Man
Yeah.
for their science-y things.
Right.
And so they send Nature Girl to go get him because he's been captured by the U.S. government.
Yeah.
And they send Nature Girl and the green folks to go and rescue him so that they can do science.
Yes. Yes.
They go and they rescue him. But Nature Girl is like, screw them. I'm not taking him back to do science.
Right.
And so then she's
burning
takes him.
all bridges. She's
Yes.
burning all bridges. This is where we take a turn that gets a little confusing to me, though, because there starts to be like infighting among X-Men Green.
Yes.
Like Armageddon Man, Sauron, Nature Girl are like all at odds with each other and fighting.
And Curse.
But Curse kind of has a breakdown. It was like, I thought this would be different. I thought I could control this. And she basically says, like, I'm the reason why you've spiraled out of control.
Yes.
Nature Girl. She says that, like, I wish to have friends, like, I sort of, whatever, jinxed this into happening. And because of that, you've acted in a way to cut you off from other people and make it so we have to stay a group. She says specifically, like, this has made it so your natural instincts to stop, like your natural instincts to know what the line is, to pull yourself back, you've blown right past that because of me. So then it becomes kind of a question of, like,
What is real?
What is real? Like, what is really Nature Girl and what is the product of Curse's jinx?
Well, I like that moment. And, like, later on, they sort of pull back from it, and I don't know where they're going with it narratively.
Yeah.
But when that initially happens, it makes a lot of sense. Because
Yeah, it
it's
does.
like Curse has been a part of this from the very beginning.
Yeah.
And Nature Girl is leading the charge.
Yeah.
But she's very clearly coming unhinged over time.
Yeah.
And everything is just going wrong.
Right.
And so it makes a lot of sense for it to have been kind of down to Curse.
Yeah.
Whether it's like she started the ball rolling or just her presence with Nature Girl is just making sure that negative things, like things go the worst way that they could go.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think it is pushing her to go farther than she would. And then we have a couple of instances like Wolverine catches up to her, and without Curse, she probably would have been like, okay, Wolverine, I trust you. Let's figure this out. Then she gets pulled back to Krakoa with the X-Men, and that's another situation where it's like Kitty's there and like people she trusts. She probably would have been like, all right, let's figure this out.
Yeah.
And then we have Horticulture, a bunch of like-minded people that are working on what she wants to work on, and she burns that bridge too.
Yeah.
All of those things force her to kind of like stay with Curse. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then, you know, Curse sort of tries to dial it back. She tries to sort of undo it, and it doesn't work, and it costs her.
She tries to take it back, and we've seen her do throughout this run. Curse will try to do things that aren't bad. She'll use magic or whatever specifically for a good thing because she has to, and she's like, this is going to cost me, I'm going to do it because we have to for the mission or whatever. So we've seen her do things, and it cost her.
Right.
So now when she is here and she's like, all of this is wrong and it's my fault and I'm just going to fix it, then she takes it all on herself and she tries to undo all of the bad stuff, and it ends up killing her.
Yeah.
So that happens.
Yeah, right.
And how does this end because we switch perspectives in the Infinity comic for a little chunk there.
Yeah.
Around here somewhere. Because Curse dies and Nature Girl, I mean, it doesn't undo anything. It just kind of like pushes Nature Girl
right,
further.
which I think is another thing that kind of pulls at that question of like, was it Curse or was it Nature Girl? And it sort of seems like it was always within Nature Girl, and Curse kind of opened the floodgates, and now even though Curse is out of the picture, Nature Girl's like, let's keep rolling.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Let's keep it going.
But then you still can wonder, like, the effort that Curse was putting in to undo it, did that slingshot and end up in her last moment cursing things further.
Right. And by this point, Nature Girl is like fully decked out. Very different look. She's got like the red top and the big antlers, and like she looks completely different than she did in the beginning. She like looks and acts completely different than like the sweet talking to birds, going to the zoo with Eye-Boy version of Nature Girl that we saw to begin with.
Yes.
And now she doesn't have anyone, really. I mean, Sauron is kind of like, forget this. Curse is dead. Saoirse's on Wakanda, and so she's kind of like, what now?
So now it's just her and Armageddon Man.
Yes, but they're not like friends.
No, they don't have anything tying them together.
Right, yeah.
So it sort of ends there. We take a little detour with Xavier doing stuff. When we come back to this story, it's with Illyana.
Yeah.
And her team going after Nature Girl because she's sort of become this monster.
Yeah.
They are determined to bring her back alive. And you sort of get the impression, it's not really explicitly stated, but you get the impression that the majority of the X-Men, whatever, the council whole thing, is probably more inclined to just be like, whatever it takes, we need to stop her.
Yeah, right.
And Illyana has sort of decided to take on the responsibility of like, I'm just going to find her first, because just because she's a monster doesn't mean that we kill her.
Right.
And so she hunts her down.
Yeah.
When we see Nature Girl next, she is gone. She's just completely gone.
For sure.
And she's not even, like, she does a lot of lip service to, like, creating her own family and, like, loyalty and stuff. But it's very clear that she is just manipulating everybody around her to get what she wants in any given moment.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of how she teams up with Spider-Girl here in the end. The, what is her name? The Gwen... I can't remember. Gwen Warren, I want to say, is this Spider-Girl's name. But
Which is like, hang on a sec.
Yes.
Her name is Gwen.
Yeah.
And she's blonde.
Yeah.
And she's a Spider-Girl.
I haven't read a ton of this. I know that she is a clone, and there's spider DNA and mutant DNA. I don't know why the Gwen name. Because you also have, you have Gwen Stacy, obviously.
This is what I'm saying.
And then you have Gwen Poole. There's like three blonde ladies with bob cuts. No, it's not.
Name.
It's not. But she forces Spider-Girl's transformation and turns her into like the big giant spider monster that she becomes.
Yep.
And then is kind of like, well, you better team up with me. You're a big monster.
Yep, everybody. Well, because too, Gwen was at Jean Grey's school.
Yes, she was. Yeah.
But she wasn't. I mean, because I guess there's this spider DNA situation. She's not really. She's a mutant, but she's not just a mutant.
She's kind of a cloned mutant. Like she's a mutant through the cloning process.
And evidently, this was not cool.
Not cool
with the X-Men, and like they don't have the best history with like accepting.
They don't.
Their whole thing is accepting differences, but when the differences aren't the kind of differences that they're prepared for, they aren't the best at dealing with it. Great. So apparently in the history of Gwen, she was kind of kicked out of the Jean Grey school.
Yeah.
And so then she decided that she was going to pretend to be human, because as long as she doesn't go spider, she just looks like a little blonde girl.
Right.
So she's like living with these two human girls and working at this, it's a Krakoan human fusion restaurant. Because apparently Krakoa is like its own whole culture.
Sure.
They have a language, which I don't fully understand.
Huh, okay.
It's a whole thing.
All right.
But yeah, so she's pretending to be human. And then when Nature Girl comes and forces her to transform into a spider, they are like calling her mutie and like, oh, you're one of them. And they're like clearly not just human. They're like sucky humans.
Right.
Yeah, so then Nature Girl can be like, you were rejected by the mutants.
Yep.
You were rejected by these humans, these two specific humans right here.
Yeah.
No one will love you but me.
That's right. The only recourse is to be eco-terrorists.
Got to be an eco-terrorist.
That's the only way.
And Gwen, to her credit, pushes back a little.
A little bit.
Like a little?
A little.
She takes, it's
Not
funny because, so Nature Girl, she convinces her, because she can talk to animals. And so even when she's in spider form, she can be communicating with her. And calms her down and is like, okay, we're going to be a family. It's going to be so beautiful. And also Armageddon Man, I guess.
Right.
Because he's just tagging along.
Yeah.
They go, and she's like, we're going to kill all of the people who were ever mean to you, Gwen. Mm-hmm. But first, we're going to go poison this lake.
Yeah.
So they go to this lake, and it's been poisoned, and humans have been like, let's try to fix it, but they haven't done a great job. And she's like, I'm going to turn this lake into acid.
Right.
So that the next time people come to swim here, they will die horribly.
See, that doesn't seem like a great thing, though, for the environment, to turn a natural lake into acid.
Well, she kind of gets around that, because she's like, if there were a volcano, a volcano would turn it into acid. So
I didn't even think of that, of course.
So it could theoretically be a natural process. There's probably fish in there. It's fine.
Yeah.
But she's going to do that. And then Gwen does a pretty strong presentation of like, you told me what this was going to be.
Yeah.
I'm here for like doing the right thing and stuff, but like I don't want to be angry all the time, and it seems like you just want to be angry all the time, and like I'm not really cool with that.
Yeah.
And kind of stands up, and I'm like, okay, cool. So she at the very least is going to leave.
Yeah.
But then Nature Girl just puts on her manipulative voice again and is like, no, this is the only way. And when I'm hurt, the family hurts. So aren't you hurt for me because of me being hurt?
She's not great. She's not great.
She's becoming like a crazy, manipulative, horrible monster.
Not what I expected when reading her in Iceman that time. I wasn't like, someday she will be the biggest threat.
Yeah. And Gwen is just sort of like, okay, and just backs down completely.
Yeah. Well, I mean, she's got nothing else.
Yeah. I mean, it's a little tiny window into like a abusive relationship. So
true. Yeah.
I mean, I guess it's realistic.
Yeah.
But anyway, so they're just going to be a team. She locks down Armageddon Man in a similar way where she's like, I'm the only person who can communicate with him because he can't even speak without causing crazy damage and stuff. But I can communicate with him. And then she talks directly to him about like she understands his anger and like all this stuff. So she's just like really pinpointing the way to manipulate these people, which was not the way that she was with her previous team.
Right.
They felt a lot more like
but I mean,
a team.
They were sort of united by at least somewhat of a joint purpose, and now it's just like Nature Girl's gone full villain, which I think character arc is really interesting.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I mean, I think, the X-Men have experimented with that before. Xavier's always kind of a villain, and like Cyclops spent a long time being a pretty villainous character.
Oh, yes.
Just in his personal life back in the Claremont days.
But then actually
a villain, So I don't know. I don't know like what the long-term plans with this character is, but I think that it's a really clever use of, Marvel Unlimited and the Infinity Comics because I mean, it's kind of unusual for a series to run 72 issues now anyway. I mean, it was more common like in the, 60s, 70s, 80s, but like now that's a long run.
We get to just like focus on her and see her grow in a much more direct, fluid line.
Because it's 4 or 5 arcs, and you can pretty much like reading the whole Infinity comic, the X-Men Infinity comic, I'm sure you get like a broader picture of what's going on, but you really could just read the X-Men Green stories like as one unit because it functions as more of an anthology kind of title while keeping continuity, which I think is cool and impressive, and I don't really see working in another direction. And you're right, because when you see these kinds of shifts in like traditional medium, it does tend to have to be kind of like a sudden shift. Like someone was pushed over the line or that kind of thing, because it sort of has to happen within an issue. Right. But, and in some cases, it has to be, rectified in the next issue. Yeah, right. And seems to be no pressure here to, like, wrap this story or wrap this arc. And the fact that, like, so much time is being devoted to, a fringe character. Like, if you're only reading things that are in print, Nature Girl is an extra for the most part. You know what I mean? So the fact that she's getting this... And it's interesting that they kind of put it under this umbrella of X-Men Green, like calling it that. I think like tying it to like X-Men Gold, X-Men. Yeah, right, exactly. Blue. And I sort of, there's an X-Men Red too. But I sort of, when I first was hearing about it, assumed that there would be some sort of redeeming, that they'd sort of be like anti-heroes maybe or something like that. That's how it seems at the very beginning. Like they're anti-heroes that go further than you would expect. Right. They're anti-heroes that they are the opposite of heroes. Yes. So in that way. But yeah, I mean, I'm on board. I think it's weird. I think it's... Yeah, I've been enjoying it. Yeah. I've been enjoying it. I don't really know... It's hard to predict like where the character's arc will ultimately end. Like, is there going to be an effort to bring her back into the fold? Is she going to operate outside of like the X-Men's normal thing, or is she just going to be straight up villainous? Well, I don't know. There are a couple indications both ways, because we've now had 2 instances of someone in the X-Men going and like, we're going to handle this the right way. Yeah. We've had Wolverine going to like bring her back, and then we had Illyana going and like, we're going to, like, she's a monster now, but we're going to deal with this. Yeah. Both of those have kind of gone nowhere. Yeah. And so it makes you wonder if that's not the end game. Yeah. And like, this is just a weird situation where she's just going to keep going. Yeah. But on the other hand, following her arc, she's going so far and so clearly unhinged and like completely off the rails that it sort of has to crash and burn somewhere. Yeah. And now the council or whatever is talking about bringing back Curse, like resurrecting Curse. Yeah.
And so maybe that's how it happens.
Yeah.
You know, maybe Curse comes back into it somehow and resolves it.
Yeah. It is certainly a unique little like side cul-de-sac or whatever, like in X-Men lore, to give it this much space. It's an interesting character, and like I said, I'm interested to see what happens with her.
Yeah. So as of recording, it's still going.
Yeah.
We're caught up, but it's got some legs, so we'll see where it goes from there.
That's right.
All right. Well, thanks for talking about Nature Girl.
Yes, this is not something that I would have picked up otherwise, so it was enjoyable.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Next time we're back to the animated series, so Eric will be back on board.
Okay.
We'll be talking about Orphan's End and Love in Vain.
No memories. There
wasn't for me either, but the Love in Vain, I think, is the one with Cody.
Oh my gosh.
the rogue one. So we'll have fun talking about that.
I love that rogue voice so much, but there are certain...
The scream.
The scream is terrible.
The scream.
But even all the, like, Cody's stuff is very irritating.
Yeah. Well,
very irritating.
Anytime that she has to be young her.
Yeah.
And that's bad.
Yeah.
Jean in the Phoenix Saga, Dark Phoenix, had to be like
young
her.
Yeah.
And it was also terrible.
Yeah.
So I guess we're seeing the limits of these voice actors.
I suppose.
Anyway, so that's next time.
Okay.
Thank you to Prophetic Music for our theme song. Previously on X-Men is brought to you by the Radio Meanwhile Network. Other shows on the network include 90s Music Got Me Like, This Endurian Life, and 9021 Here We Go. Follow us on Facebook or Twitter at Previously on X. Please rate, subscribe, or share this show wherever you get your podcasts.